Hello, I'm Christian, and welcome to the JLP Leadership Podcast, a show where we talk about effective collaboration, influence, and leadership in an increasingly complex world. My interview partner is Dr. Dirk Schlimm. Dirk is an international leadership expert and the author of Influencing Powerful People. The purpose of this podcast is to share ideas and stimulate discussion, and it does not constitute professional advice of any kind. If such advice is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. The speakers, host, and JLP International Incorporated are not to be held responsible for any use, misuse, or reuse of the content. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to the JLP Leadership Podcast. This is our final episode for the season before we take a summer break. Wow, time really does fly. So we thought approaching this final episode that why don't we take some time just to reflect a bit on the past 19 episodes we had and just discuss some of the highlights. Season 2 was the first season where we had invited guests, and we will come back to them in just a second. But with regard to our regular episodes, Dirk, what were the 3 most popular episodes? What resonated most with our listeners?
Yeah, Christian, the 3 most popular episodes were conflict at the top of the house. Then we asked the questions, are 2 bosses better than one? And then we had an episode that was entitled Turmoil at Twitter. Those 3 really seem to be generating a lot of interest.
That's interesting, Dirk. That last one's title doesn't surprise me, but it is cool to hear. So maybe I'll just ask you, of course, we don't have any concrete information to work with when it comes to this, but why do you think it was these 3 particular episodes that created the level of interest they received?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so let me start with the conflict management. And this is such an important skill. And the reason is that our world is getting more complex. There are more issues to consider: political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. Just think about the AI boom that has unleashed and is promising massive productivity gains. But equally creates worries about mass unemployment, worker surveillance, and even taking over the world. And those are difficult issues. And then there is the amount of people involved. The amount of stakeholders is proliferating. Traditionally, as a business, you had to worry about customers, your owners, your workers, or your employees, and quite possibly about regulators and suppliers, and then keep an eye on competitors. And now businesses and managers have to worry about a whole host of partners, which can include suppliers, but also competitors and not-for-profits, and even social media influencers that you work with. And those companies, those people, they can help you. They can also get you into trouble. And you have to worry about your creditors. Banks used to be a rock of solidity, at least at some point, and now look at Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, or even Credit Suisse running into trouble. So it's just not what it used to be. And then you have interest groups and activists of all kinds who are savvy at using social media. And again, they can help you, they can hurt you. And all of these stakeholders put demands on the business that goes beyond making and selling your product. It creates tension in the business. And so you have to be good at managing that conflict. And you have to be good at building as much as you can win-win solutions. So I think conflict management has become an essential skill.
Dirk, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that helpful explanation. I learned a lot just from listening to that. And I think if we were to ever have some merch, I think our slogan might be conflict management matters. Just a little slogan there to live by. So Dirk, what's next?
Yeah, in the number 2 spot was our episode asking, are 2 bosses really better than one? And that's where we dealt with the matrix organization.
Right, Dirk, I remember that one well. Why do you think that one hit a chord, though?
Yeah, I think it's really a special instance of our number 3 placed episode on conflict management, because the matrix organization is really an attempt to deal with that complexity that we just talked about. And so on the one hand, If I'm organizing the company, I have functional aspects like sales, operations, human resources, and finance, and so on. And I want global standards and global strategies in managing these areas consistently company-wide. I want one way of doing things. But then I have regional markets, customers, employees who are saying, hey, your global standards, which are often headquarters standards, they don't work here. People buy differently here. They want different products. We have different labor laws. We have different cultural norms. So things are different. And we don't want people far away at headquarters to tell us what to do. And so the matrix is an attempt to create the best of both worlds, but that's complicated and it requires excellent collaboration, communication, coordination, and yes, conflict management skills matter. And you need to figure out decision making, resource allocation, trade-offs, cultural alignment, and so on. And you want to build a cohesive team and team. And so all this is to say it's not easy. And the matrix, if it's executed poorly, will create even more problems than it's attempting to solve.
Right, Dirk. So it sounds like a classic situation where something looks good on paper, but in reality, it's difficult in practice.
Yes, that's right. It's easier said than done. That's exactly the point here.
Right. And that might be another slogan for another piece of merch. But thank you for that explanation, Dirk. So now, drum roll. What was the top rated episode? Why did that gather so much interest?
Yeah, and so I should say our top rated regular episode, because we're coming to the guest episodes in just a moment, but our top rated regular episode was about turmoil at Twitter and Elon Musk's unorthodox, unconventional, and sometimes high drama management style. And I really think there should be no surprise that a figure like Elon Musk, the news a lot, creates this level of attention. And I think it's a safe assumption that Elon Musk and his work will continue to provide both ideas for radical improvement and also for controversy. But in the meantime, there is at Twitter now a new CEO, Linda Yaccarino, and so she has taken the helm at Twitter, and she has started to communicate her vision for what she calls Twitter 2.0. So let's be sure we're going to check in with her to see how things are going.
Right, Dirk. A number of follow-up episodes being suggested here. So that sounds good. Thank you for those explanations. But as you mentioned, in season 2, we expanded our format and we had a number of guests. These episodes were very popular, and I think for good reason. Firstly, we had Neil Cause, the founder and CEO at Geotab, a world leader in connected transportation. And we also had the eminent governance expert, David Beatty, a director of 40 boards in Canada, the United States, Mexico, Australia, and Europe, and chairman of 9 public and 2 private companies. And lastly, we also had Rick Powers, the academic director of the ICD Rotman Directors Education Program. It looks like these 3 guests, again for great reason, were very popular with our listeners.
Yes, they were. And so the discussion was Neil focused on strategy, and Neil really drove home the point on the importance of having clarity of where you want to go, and how you want to get there, so that you do not get driven off course along the way as new opportunities or distractions present themselves. And Neil really talked about, as an entrepreneur, he sees the world as full of opportunities. This is where he talked to us, and so it's not always easy to know, as Neil talked about, what is an opportunity and what may look like an opportunity, but it's really a distraction, and you can only know which is which if you have a well thought out strategy. So that was really an important point he made there. With David, and truly is, his vast experience over really a lifetime of super interesting work in the board world, in the government world, in the teaching world, and really truly on a truly global scale. And so with David, we had a fascinating discussion on board dynamics. We talked about what it takes to make a board effective, and really he stressed the point of being careful with how you spend and allocate your valuable time. He had a term for this. He called this the return on director time invested. And by the way, I did have a lot of feedback on people really telling me that that term explains it really well. And then David talked about the need to bring the board into the picture of the discussion, because we have to bridge the information chasm. Again, his term that lies between the board and the company management, in order to allow and enable the board to contribute meaningfully. And then his third point really was the role of the board chair to build an effective and value added board. So that was our discussion with David. And then we really fit well. We talked with Rick about what to expect when joining a board and how to go about securing a board position. And this is a question that comes up a lot. That's a question that I actually get asked by people. How do I go about finding and joining a board? And so this is why it was just fantastic to have Rick there. He's a great communicator, and he just had a lot of practical advice on this topic.
Dirk, you're definitely right. Those interviews were amazing. I remember them quite well. I was taking profuse amounts of notes, just writing away. And I can already say that in all these interviews, I've already applied so much of it in my own interviews, both in professional and academic settings, whether it's with boards or job interview situations. So very practical, very useful. And I see why 100% those were so popular with our listeners, why we got so much feedback. So I really hope that we have some more interviews in the future. But as I think back on those interviews, Dirk, I think what you and I talked about the most and what made them so exciting and so memorable was that I was actually put in the hot seat a few times there.
Yeah, I think that may have been a bit of an unexpected experience there, but
Yes.
Christian, you managed it well. So we were impressed. And again, I get a lot of feedback on your hosting here. It is super appreciated, and you had to be on your toes as the questions from our guests came to you completely out of the blue. But I think there was even a lesson in that.
Yes.
Sense. You might have been, hey, I'm just now in this meeting and I'm just listening. There's nothing for me to do. And you have to be prepared for all eventualities, right? People can go off script, which especially David did that a couple of times. And so this is was just good that you were ready there, and I think a fantastic lesson learned there,
100%.
experientially, if you will, right, right there. But on that topic, Christian, just want to ask you, what were the highlights of the season for you, and what did you take away?
Right, Dirk. Thanks for the question. And I think it's impossible to go on a bit too much how amazing those interviews were and how memorable those hot seat moments were for me. Definite highlights. And as you said, Dirk, I think it's worth, again, just going on a little bit. Great reminders, very practical lessons to always be prepared to listen well and be ready to give that answer. So definitely taking those away as favorite highlight moments. But just thinking back to the season as a whole, of course, I had some time to think about it. I was looking through our episode titles and some of the notes again, and I think two really caught my eye because they were just so memorable and definitely highlights. And I got those titles. My top two, I think, episodes, as I think back, regular episodes, were Drama on the House Floor and Removed from Lutzerat. And to summarize, in both those episodes, Dirk, you shared a fascinating story from current events as our launching point. In the former and the drama on the House floor, we talked about Republican representatives in the US struggling to keep order in the ranks in order that they might claim the speakership in the House. In the latter episode, Removed from Lutzerat, we learned about the surprising conflict between leading climate activists on one side and the co-chair of Germany's Green Party on the other. What I loved about those episodes is how we looked at these big, fascinating, truly headline articles, and then found in those stories some really practical principles that we can apply in our situations as we navigate conflicts and how to manage conflicts well. So, Dirk, those were fantastic moments. I think, for example, to grab one point from each, in the first one there, we learned that we should expect conflict from even within our own team sometimes, and that A key to handling those conflicts is managing our emotions appropriately. Additionally, not disagreeing with that, but also adding some more nuance from that other episode, we discussed how effective conflict management might also require us to be assertive at times. We always want to be constructive, but if the situation demands it, sometimes we have to be forceful. Not a bully, but also not a pushover. But Dirk, those were my two favorite regular podcast episodes. But since you gave me the floor here, I also want to mention that during the past year, while the season was ongoing, I should mention we also have a blog on our Gemoir website. I'll put a link to that in the description down below. And in fact, reading over some of those articles, I could safely say that some of my favorite Gemoir content is in a written format on that blog. So I encourage our listeners, don't just be listeners here, be readers, check those out in the link. But one of those issues that we already mentioned it in this episode, and it's come out throughout our season, is that AI is truly transformative. It's a massive deal. It's game changing. It's leaving an incredible impact, not only on industries, but even personal relationships and conflicts that we're having. So it just so happens on the Gemoir blog, we had a guest post from an industry expert giving some jargon-free recaps of the recent AI race. That article was really helpful, really readable, especially for me, someone who's not in the world of tech. And it's definitely something I think is worth highlighting for our listeners now. So, Dirk, those were my favorite moments from the past season.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. And to maybe just pick up on that a little bit. So I thought Leonard's piece on the AI race came from a very practical perspective. Also, he's a professional user, an engineer who uses AI technology in his daily work, and it's a huge topic. And so it was just fantastic to get his view on it again from a front row seat, so to speak. And then again, those two stories that you mentioned, in both of them, actually, the drama continues. And so on the one is the drama in the U.S. House continued with debates over the U.S. debt ceiling, and the people who were in conflict there, and then said they had resolved it, they were at it again, and so that drama continues. And the same thing with the struggles of the German Green Party. It is difficult to be a climate-friendly party in power. You might think, hey, that's great. You're now there. You can affect change. But now you're living the tension between the reality of governing and sometimes having to make compromises to get things done. And you're still facing the pressure from the single-minded climate activists for whom it's never enough, and so that tension actually has flared up even more since we looked at the episode over the mining, the closure of or actually the closure of part of the mine, but continuing other parts of the mine in Lützerath. So maybe it's something we're going to come back to as well. But right now, we're looking forward to a summer break. Christians, any plans for the summer?
Thanks, Dirk. I think a lot of people will have picked up already that I'm a PhD student, now PhD candidate. And so I think my summer will be spent researching, writing, and getting deep into the topic of my dissertation. So a lot of work on that ahead of me this summer. But also, and this is based on some of the things I mentioned, learning from some of our interviews and episodes, I've actually, looks like I've secured an adjunct professor position for the winter semester in the coming year. So preparing to teach, getting my syllabus together and timing and figuring all that out. So looks like a bit of summer, but everyone listening, don't worry. My summer will be a traditional summer. I'll make some time for some vacation, enjoying the outdoors and having a good time in the garden. Some people know that's a highlight for me. So Dirk, it's a lot of school, a lot of work, but also a lot of sun. How about yourself?
Yeah, Krishna, I look forward to things slowing down a little bit over the summer. I still have a bit of business travel actually
Of course.
coming up, but also looking forward to a summer vacation in Europe. We'll be on a Rhine cruise from Amsterdam to Basel, going up the River Rhine. So really looking forward to that, and maybe there's some stories to pick up there along the way.
Wonderful, Dirk. Thanks for sharing that. Hoping you have a wonderful time exploring the Rhine and those business travels go well. But everyone listening, thank you so much. That is a wrap for season 2. It's been an exciting season, a lot of topics, a lot of guests, just a lot of good information. And throughout the season, a lot of good feedback, a lot of good comments from you all. So everyone listening, I want to take a moment just to thank you for being a part of the Jaguar Leadership Podcast by listening, by commenting, by sharing, by discussing the content here. You are what makes this podcast a podcast. You're what makes this show a show. So we really appreciate you. And as we already highlighted, while we're taking a break for the season now, we do have so much more planned in the future. We have a lot of follow-up episodes to come up on, ranging from Twitter. But Dirk, I also think, as we were talking, that Nordstrom episode, it's interesting in real time seeing those stores close down. That's another show we had. So maybe some follow-up there with our various episodes, the various companies we discussed. But also, I hope, Dirk, some more guests in the future. I know we're working on that. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up in season 3, which will be back after our summer break. But everyone, that's it. I hope if you're listening to this that you have a wonderful summer yourself, whether it's working or relaxing, or ideally a bit of both, that you have a good time. Feel free to talk more about the podcast. Let us know what you would like to see in season 3, and we will love to provide that for you here on the Jaguar Leadership Podcast. We will see you back in a number of weeks.